And so we said, well, what if we use soccer stadiums as the catalyst for development? That way, not only can we bring professional soccer to, 100 plus markets around the country, but we could also bring economic impact. We're working on about 70 projects right now. The league and, myself and, we have a big real estate team, which I don't know of any other league that has a large real estate development department. Growing up, for me, soccer had this superpower to change lives, because it certainly changed my family's life. Because my dad happened to be really good at soccer, it got him all these opportunities that he certainly would not have had.
Welcome back to the Hustle and Grind podcast, the show where we dig into why real entrepreneurs trade comfort for conviction. This isn't about vanity metrics or overnight success. It's about the stories behind building a reputation that actually matters. I'm your host, Andrew, keynote architect, platform builder, and fellow founder in the trenches. Today, I'm sitting down with Justin Papadakis, the Deputy CEO and Chief Real Estate Officer for the United Soccer League, where he's spearheading the massive expansion of soccer across the US and driving billions into stadium development. So Justin, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. You have this really fascinating world that you operate in, and so I'm really excited to ask you a bunch of questions today, learn a little bit more, and teach our audience what you do. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Anytime. So you have taken soccer franchises and made them something completely different. And I think it's a really interesting thing. And I want you to explain it in your words, what you do that makes it different than any other franchise owner. It's hard for me to explain, but I want you to explain it.
So we had a novel strategy in thinking about how we grew, how we were going to grow professional soccer around the country. And my dad and I were, who's our CEO and owner of the league, we were in LA Live, which for your audience hadn't been there. It's, where the Staples Center is, and it was in a bad part of LA, and the area just couldn't get off the ground. And they decided to put in a arena, and then all of a sudden you had a JW, you had a Ritz-Carlton, you had bars and restaurants. It made the area flourish. And my dad and I were saying, wow, if even in LA, the second largest market in the country, if they had a problem with real estate being so scarce there, they couldn't have a catalyst to really get the market going. If that's a problem in LA, that must be a problem around the country. And so we said, well, what if we use soccer stadiums as the catalyst for development? That way, not only can we bring professional soccer to 100 plus markets around the country, but we could also bring, and critically, economic impact for our city, county, and state partners. And so I think that was the idea, and that's what we've been executing on since 2008.
So correct me if I'm wrong in this, but what it sounds like is kind of the McDonald's version of professional soccer, where McDonald's doesn't really sell hamburgers. They're a real estate company that happens to sell so it's sort of, they have both sides of the deal, if you will. Is that accurate, or is it something maybe slightly different, or?
Well, I think you can think about that way, but at the end of the day, what we are is a soccer league. Mm-hmm. And the real estate is just a critical part. Okay. When we look at the entire fan journey that our fans have, and soccer is different than baseball. For example, baseball could be 3 hours, could be 5 hours. They have 8 stoppages of play, so the consumption patterns are different from food and beverage compared to soccer, which is a 2-hour fixed window sport, and there's only 1 stoppage of play. So. And soccer also has a significantly younger demographic, which means that most of our fans want to go out after the game, and especially because it's only a 2-hour fixed window sport. So when we thought about how can we really create a differentiated fan experience, we wanted our fans to be able to come down before the game and then go out after the game. And the concept of a stadium anchor district is in stark contrast to how stadiums used to be built, back in the, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, where stadiums were put on an island surrounded by 90 acres of parking lots. Mm-hmm. And so I think American football has this tailgating culture, which was kind of conducive to that. But soccer doesn't have that, where our fans want to go to a bar and a restaurant and then go to the game, then go back out. And so we thought if we could really provide that holistic fan experience, that would help our team. But again, that would also help our cities, counties, and states, because that's where that economic impact comes in. And I think there's also a very different way how people lived. They really wanted to be in live, work, play environments. And so being able to there's a lot of apartments around cities, but only a small number of apartments that are in stadium districts. And so I think that was really the nucleus of how we thought about the strategy. And then, since 2008, you've had great projects in other sports like the Battery for the Braves in Atlanta, Water Street here in our hometown that the Lightning have done. So this concept now of Stadium Anchor District is now firmly established, but it was really the core of our strategy in 2008.
Mm-hmm. And that makes a lot of sense. Being from Buffalo, New York, and having, the Buffalo Bills and a very, very strong American football culture, our stadium is 30, 40 minutes outside the city, with no traffic. And it is insulated. There's a couple of bars here and there, but, it makes complete sense. If you say it's mostly parking lot, because we do our tailgating. That's what we do, right? So it's interesting you say that soccer is quite different. And it sounds like they can kind of live beside each other. Like, you have got this culture, you have this culture, but I've heard of people saying, hey, we're going to build a stadium downtown. We tried to do it here in Buffalo to build our new stadium downtown, and it ended up being kind of moved. And that's more because of the culture, right? Just because the soccer culture is very different than American football. Do you think that?
I do. The other aspect that I think we innovated on, which was crucial to executing on this strategy, was that the league itself would go out and structure these deals. As you know from being in Buffalo, and that's with an existing NFL team, which creates some easier aspects because it's NFL and because the team's existing. For us to execute this strategy at scale, and just context, we're working on about 70 projects right now. The league and myself and we have a big real estate team, which I don't know of any other league that has a large real estate development department. And so we go out and work with our city, county, and state partners for an extended period of time. So on the short end, these deals can take 2 years, but most of them take 5, 7, 10 plus years. And so that was really required us because we have staying power, right? And we also get better at this as we do more. But we can work with our city, county, state partners for 2 to 10 years to put these things together. And so that's very difficult for a city who has elections every year or two, and then the county has elections, and there's state elections, and there's federal elections, to go assemble the right land and then put the strategy in to develop a stadium anchor district, which most people just haven't built stadiums before, and it's it's a niche area of business like so many others that you just have to have an acquired, learning experience on. And so for us to be able to take the lead on that with our city, county partners, that's been able us to really gain their trust because we're working with them every day for years and sometimes a decade. But it also helps us along the same way, really build up the local grassroots supports for soccer. So I think that was the other big part of the strategy that has been a big part of our success, that we went out directly and worked with our municipal partners to bring these things over the line.
And do you find that you get resistance from local? I mean, because we're an NFL football franchise, so it's very easy for us to get money and to get tax breaks and that sort of a thing. With soccer, I think it's going to be very different because it's not as big here in the States as it is overseas. Is that something that you find that's difficult for them to wrap their heads around, especially changing, like you said, you get a new election every 2 or 3 years. Is that something you find that's difficult, or are they very receptive to getting a soccer stadium, or what's been the response to that?
So I found this extremely fascinating. When we started really in earnest, we bought the league in 2008, and then I joined full time in 2015 after we got the league stabilized. When I first was meeting with our city county partners, there was a little bit of still like, is soccer the right thing for the city? I would say within 2 years, so probably 2017, there was a fundamental shift in our city county partners, where in 2015, they were the last, like I'll call it like the baseball generation. And then you had this huge shift where now all of our city county partners, they played soccer, their kids play soccer. And so of the 70 markets we are in, I can't think of one that said, is soccer the right sport for us to put all these resources behind? And so, and really excitingly, starting, 4 years ago, when we were going to launch our women's professional soccer league, we haven't had one conversation with a municipal partner that said, can women's sports be commercially viable? And so I think that's a testament to just a generational change, and a really strong conviction around the sport of soccer, and importantly around women's professional sports. And so huge credit to our, again, our municipal partners for believing that. And then again, they see the economic impact that the sport of soccer can bring, and that their residents really, really want soccer as part of the identity of their cities.
Absolutely. So I want to pivot for a second, because one of the things I love to ask is, what was the sequence of events that brought you to soccer? It's an interesting niche between the soccer and real estate side of things. And was this, besides just wanting to take your hometown and build it up a little bit, a bad section of town, and make it better and gentrify it? What led up to that? Was there a moment when you said, I want to go do soccer? Did you play soccer when you were younger? What led to that?
So I'll take you way back. So my dad's 79, and so this was back. He grew up in Greece, very poor, and his family decided to immigrate over to Canada just because there wasn't a lot of opportunity in Greece at that time, and so they didn't have any money, didn't speak the language. But what he happened to be an excellent soccer player, and that got him into a high school, which got him into a college, which got him into law school because he coached the soccer team, and he ended up having a really successful career. So growing up for me, soccer had this superpower to change lives, because it certainly changed my family's life. Because my dad happened to be really good at soccer, it got him all these opportunities that he certainly would not have had. And so I ended up playing. My dad was a great player. I was a good player with a great coach. And ended up playing the sport a little bit. But we certainly always had a feeling that we needed to give back to the sport that gave us and our family so much. And so we saw the USL as really the platform to do that, because we could provide thousands of professional playing jobs, hundreds of coaching jobs, thousands of front office jobs, and really accelerate the sport to, again, as a payback for, the amazing things that it did for our family. And so this is certainly, a big investment for us. But this is really a lot more meaningful than that, because it's a game that we love. It's a game that, again, just I think can provide so much opportunity, and it's really meaningful for us to come to work every day and know that we can bring that opportunity to other people like it did for our family.
Mm-hmm. So the other thing I want to know, and I always, when somebody has a really interesting idea or a new way of doing something, I like to hear the background to it. What brought the real estate side in? Like, what was the series of events that caused you to say, hey, it might be a good idea for us also to get investment in the real estate side of things?
So again, as I mentioned at LA Live, I subsequently, from 2008, 2015, worked in commercial real estate and really saw the power that, even though it kind of predated my era, that, anchor stores and malls had, right? So at the time during the shopping center boom, anchor stores really provide the catalyst for the rest of the mall to come together. And at the time, when people went out to, with their friends and families, there was a real destinational where they went out to go buy things and congregate around that activity. There was a significant change, as your listeners know, from, I think really starting 08 and certainly running up to 15, where people went out not to buy things, but to have experiences. Because if you wanted to buy something, it's easy to buy it on Amazon. And so I think that's a cultural shift because of the technology. And so, again, we thought if we could really create our stadiums, we call community living rooms, because we thought it's really the one place that everyone can come together week in and week out. There's this amazing soundtrack to a soccer match, if your listeners haven't been to one. And we thought if we could then wrap that with these districts that would just, again, create that entire fan journey, that's a way to create and enhance the experience for fans, and then create and enhance the experience for players, because they have this amazing soundtrack and passionate supporter base around them. So that's really how the strategy evolved. And I think, with billions of dollars of stadium development districts underway, it certainly has proven successful, and we're just getting started. So I think that's for us the most exciting thing.
Now, can you also maybe for future development leverage all of the real estate that you have? Because it's a huge asset to be able to take that. And that's what McDonald's does. A lot of people don't know churches. A lot of major denominations use real estate to be able to build and go from there. And so is that something that you do as well? So using those real estate and to be able to kind of leverage and maybe self-fund?
We do. So the stadium districts and the stadiums themselves typically are largely funded by the tax increment. There's a lot of financing tools in the toolbox, but TIF is one of the primary ones that we can build larger stadiums for actually cheaper because we're generating a significant amount of tax increment with the stadium district around it. So most of our real estate that we developed has been sitting there for decades for one reason or another, that the city just, they really wanted to develop. They just couldn't find the catalyst to really spark the private investment to want to bring their capital to that land parcel. Mm-hmm. And so stadiums are a way to break this chicken and the egg cycle. You need people to have bars and restaurants, and you need bars and restaurants to have people, right? So how do you break that dynamic? And stadiums are a way to do that because they're the catalyst that we can then attract, billions of dollars of equity dollars, real estate investment dollars, to projects that really believe in the thesis of stadium anchor developments. And so I think, many of our cities that, they dollars go to the big markets. Typically investment dollars go to the New Yorks, Miamis, LAs. And so we've been able to really argue for those capital providers that these stadium anchor districts, even if they're in smaller markets or sub-markets of major markets, that these districts will outperform larger markets, developments in larger markets. So, and again, I think that's borne true, and that's why we can keep attracting, billions of dollars in investment to keep fueling these projects.
Mm-hmm. And go into a little bit about tax increments and how are you using that for funding? Because I think that's something that most people haven't heard. It sounds like it's a very specific use case for it. And so I'd love to just real high level, kind of what does that mean? What is it used for? Can it be used for other things other than stadiums, stuff like that?
So in many areas of the country, the city owns land that they have for one reason or another. Or it's private land that there is no development on, and typically they've held it for a long period of time. So the tax being generated, the real estate tax being generated on that land is very small to zero. And so when you put a apartment building or hotel or typically bars and restaurants underneath apartment buildings, they obviously generate, now the building pays significant amount of real estate taxes because the real estate taxes are, a percentage of the, value of the improvements or the construction costs, so to speak. And so now you go from $0 of improvements on the land because there is no improvements on the land, it's just land, to now hundreds of millions of dollars of improvements on the land. And so that is the tax increment is the increment from zero to what now that those properties are paying in real estate taxes. Additionally, again, there's incremental sales tax. Land doesn't sell beers and hamburgers, right? Yep. And so when you put bars and restaurants, those bars and restaurants are selling beers and hamburgers and paying sales tax. And so there's, again, I think cities really love it because it's increment over zero. And that's funding the stadiums, partly funding the stadiums and partly funding incremental tax revenues to our municipal partners.
Awesome. Cool. Well, this has been really fascinating. I love the concept that you guys have, and I love the idea that you came up with. And I always love to hear new ways of doing things. And this sounds like a really interesting new way that ends up winning for everyone. I do have one question for you though. And I always like to talk about legacy. So where do you see yourself 5 years from this point?
So I think really exciting for us is we are, to use mixed metaphors in baseball. I think we're we're only in the third inning of where the league will be. And so again, as I mentioned earlier, we're working in about 70 markets right now. And there is a very clear pathway to do, many, if not all of those projects. And so when we think about what that means for the amount of professional playing jobs on the men's side and the women's side, and particularly the women's side, because, just for example, before we started the Super League, there were 240 women's professional playing jobs, and I think like 14,000 women college soccer players, right? And so when we think that we can, easily 5x that, in the next, 5 plus years, that's a meaningful impact on the sport. And one of the hard dynamics of professional sports is everything has to rise at once, right? You need stadiums to come online, you need players, you need coaches, you need media partners, corporate partners, fans, you need all of that to come online at the same time. And I think we now have this very clear pathway for growth. And that is a clear signal, for example, to these amazing women in college or they're going to college that they say, oh, I know that, 20 new stadiums are coming online. That means another 400 playing jobs. And so I'm going to, there's a career for me in professional soccer. It was very understandable that they could look at this even 2 years ago and say, realistically, there's 2 jobs available. And should I continue putting that extra time, that extra effort, that extra practice into developing my soccer skills when I'm competing with thousands of other women for 2 positions? Mm-hmm. And so now I think that dynamic has changed, and that also applies off the field. I would say, any of your listeners or your listeners' kids, we have thousands of we're gonna have thousands of front office jobs. And so even if you aren't the best players and you're not going to play professional on the field, you can have sports as a career because of these new teams coming online. And I think USL team, regardless of whether soccer is your favorite sport or where you want to end up, coming in as a front office professional and working your way up through a USL team is much easier than working your way up through an NFL team, which is like working your way up through Google, right? These are just very mature, large organizations where, and for a USL team, you can get more responsibility quicker and work your way up. Then, if you want to go work in the NFL, move over as a more senior executive. So that's what I think our legacy is. Again, it all goes back for us to giving back to the game that gave our family so much. And, if we can look back 5 years from now and say, we have $10 billion of stadium anchor development, that's a lot of small business owners that have made their livelihoods. Again, that's a lot of players, coaches that have made their livelihood because of soccer. That's success for our family.
Awesome. Well, Justin, thank you so much for being on and spreading some wisdom with us today. Really appreciate having you.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hustle and Grind podcast, where we unpack what it really takes to build something that matters. If today's conversation hit home, do me a favor. Share it with someone who's in the trenches too. And if you're building your own brand, platform, or message and want help turning that story into serious authority, head over to theauthorityforge.com to see how we can help. Until next time, keep showing up, keep shipping, and keep chasing the work that sets you on fire. I'm Andrew, and this was the Hustle and Grind podcast.